You're standing at a pivotal moment, almost like the center point between two completely different worlds. Behind you lies the memory of one of the wildest and most overheated housing booms the country has ever experienced. In front of you stretches a map of America, not the kind you unfold when planning a vacation, but the kind you study when you're trying to figure out how to protect your future. You've heard the rumors, you've watched the headlines pile up, mortgage rates remain painfully high, insurance in many regions is either unaffordable or unavailable, and the average family feels more shut out of homeownership than ever before. But here's the part almost no one wants to admit. In several states, the real downturn hasn't fully hit yet. What's coming isn't a mild correction or a tiny 5% pullback. We're talking about a deep structural reset, one that may feel less like a slowdown and more like a plunge. So welcome to the journey. We're about to travel across the country, state by state, and uncover the 10 places where the housing bubble is stretched the thinnest, where demand is evaporating, where risk is skyrocketing, and where home prices are poised to crumble by 2026. We're going to examine everything that matters: supply shortages or surpluses, insurance instability, population shifts, and the eye-opening statistics local agents prefer you never discover. Stay with us, because some of the states you assume are the safest may actually be the most vulnerable, and the state that lands at number 1 isn't just facing a housing correction, it's carrying a financial fuse that could shake the entire national economy. This is the kind of insight that helps you navigate what's ahead. If this road trip through the truth resonates with you, tap the like button and subscribe, and tell us in the comments, which state keeps you up at night? Grab your keys, we're heading to our first destination. Number 10. Florida. Our journey starts the moment you cross into the Sunshine State, but instead of the light, you can almost feel a weight in the air. Florida's housing market looks picture-perfect on the surface, like a sandcastle carved with incredible detail. Yet the ocean is rising fast, and what's coming toward it is far more threatening than a simple wave. The real issue here goes beyond high home prices. The real danger is that homes are becoming nearly impossible to insure. According to the Insurance Information Institute, Florida is responsible for about 80% of all homeowners' insurance lawsuits in the U.S., despite having only 9% of the actual claims. That imbalance has sent premiums into a spiral. Over the past 3 years, average insurance costs have more than doubled, soaring past $5,000 annually, and many homeowners now receive renewal notices with figures closer to $10,000 or even higher. No market can sustain this. As a result, large insurance carriers, including Allstate and Farmers, have either withdrawn from the state or sharply reduced the number of new policies they're willing to issue. The burden has fallen onto Citizens Property Insurance, the state's last resort insurer, which now covers more than 1.4 million homes. That number is unprecedented, and the system is straining under the pressure. But Florida's troubles don't end with insurance. Even though prices remain elevated, Redfin's data shows that the number of active listings is surging. By late 2024, available homes statewide were up almost 50% compared to the previous year. In some former boom markets like Cape Coral, inventory has exploded by nearly 89%. That's the classic sign of homeowners trying to escape, while buyers have stopped showing up. On top of that, ATTOM data reports that Florida consistently ranks among the top 3 states for foreclosure activity. And the oversupply problem is only growing. The U.S. Census Bureau confirms that Florida has been issuing far more building permits than needed for new households, creating a massive wave of incoming supply that the market simply cannot absorb. It's a fragile framework, almost a house built on stilts. Without insurance, buyers can't secure mortgages, and when too many homes hit the market at once, values drop sharply. Florida is the front line of this looming crash. If you live in Florida, how much have your insurance costs climbed? Share your experience below. Number 9. Texas. We're leaving the shoreline behind and driving straight into the center of the Lone Star State. For years, Texas was celebrated as the land of endless opportunity, a place where people flocked for cheaper homes, booming job markets, and the legendary Texas Miracle. Cities like Austin became symbols of explosive growth as both families and Fortune 500 companies poured in. But that excitement is fading, and the shine is wearing off. At the core of the Texas boom was one simple advantage: affordability. That advantage has evaporated. The biggest pressure point now is property taxes. Texas may not charge a state income tax, but homeowners feel the difference when the tax bill shows up. The Tax Foundation ranks Texas as having the 6th highest property tax burden in the entire country. As home prices doubled, property taxes did as well, and the impact has been brutal. According to research from the Texas Real Estate Research Center, a household in Austin now needs to earn more than $120,000 a year just to comfortably afford a median-priced home. The irony? The very people who helped build these cities can no longer afford to live in them. Then comes the second major issue: massive overbuilding. Developers, driven by pandemic-era demand, built as if the surge would last forever. U.S. Census Bureau numbers show that Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston lead the entire nation in new construction permits, especially for multifamily buildings. But now the demand has cooled dramatically. Redfin's latest figures reveal that Austin's housing inventory has exploded. The city, which once had barely 2 weeks of available homes in 2021, now sits at more than 6 months of supply, classic buyer's market territory. And it shows. Zillow reports that more than 40% of listings in both Austin and San Antonio have undergone price reductions. This isn't a gentle cooling, it's a full-on reversal. Add another layer of instability from the state's dependence on the oil and gas industry, and the picture grows even shakier. Atom data notes that foreclosure starts in Texas are up 20% year over year, signaling distress beneath the surface. The old Texas formula, limitless expansion and sprawling development, has finally hit a wall. Affordability has vanished. Supply is overwhelming the market. Property taxes are squeezing families so hard that many have no choice but to sell. If you're living in Texas, have you felt the pressure of rising taxes? Tell us your experience in the comments. Number 8. Utah. Leaving the wide-open plains of Texas behind, our route turns north and climbs straight into the mountains of Utah, a state that became one of the biggest housing boom winners during the pandemic years. The growth across the Silicon Slopes, especially around Salt Lake City, was nothing short of explosive. But anything that shoots upward that quickly usually comes back down just as fast. Utah's main problem can be summed up in a single sentence: home prices launched into the stratosphere, but incomes stayed stuck on the ground. Researchers at the Kem C. Gardner Policy Institute at the University of Utah have shown that the gap between what people earn and what homes cost is now the largest it has ever been in Utah's recorded history. That kind of disconnect simply can't hold. So when the Federal Reserve started lifting interest rates, Utah's housing market didn't soften. It slammed into a wall. Analysts at the university's David Eccles School of Business found that Utah is particularly vulnerable to rising rates because buyers were already stretching themselves thin to afford homes during the surge. Now let's break down the actual numbers. Although the news cycle likes to claim prices are leveling out, the underlying data suggests something very different. Redfin reports that home values across the Salt Lake City metro area are down nearly 10% from their 2022 peak. In certain suburbs that overheated the fastest, the drop is almost double that, closer to 20%. Even the Federal Housing Finance Agency has repeatedly singled out Utah, especially the Provo-Orem corridor, as one of the most artificially inflated markets in the entire country. In some locations, prices appear to be more than 40% above where fundamentals say they should be. Meanwhile, supply is quietly building. The Salt Lake Board of Realtors notes that homes are sitting on the market 3 times longer than they did during the frenzy, and price cuts have become a normal part of listings rather than a surprise. There's another crack forming under the surface: the tech sector. The very industry that powered Utah's now famous Silicon Slopes is cooling off. Layoffs and a slowdown in high-income hiring are reducing demand for the upper-tier homes that once sold instantly. When you strip it down, Utah's housing boom was fueled by cheap money and tech-driven optimism. Both of those supports are weakening, and the market is beginning to feel the tremors. If you're living in Utah, are you noticing the Silicon Slopes starting to shift? Number 7. Arizona. We head south once again, dropping back into the desert, and this time the heat you're feeling isn't just the triple-digit temperature. Arizona's housing market is cooking for all the wrong reasons. Phoenix, especially, has become the perfect example of what happens when speculation grows bigger than reality, and now the consequences are finally catching up. 2 simple words explain Arizona's unfolding downturn: investor retreat. During the pandemic frenzy, Phoenix became the single hottest target for iBuyers. Companies like Zillow and Opendoor using algorithms to snatch up properties without ever setting foot inside them. Real estate expert Mike Delprete reported that at the peak of the buying craze, nearly 10% of all Phoenix homes were being purchased by these automated investors. That artificial demand pushed prices far beyond what normal families could sustain. But the party ended abruptly. Opendoor posted enormous financial losses, while Zillow abandoned its iBuyer program entirely. With these players gone, the inflated competition vanished, but the inflated prices are still hanging in the air, waiting to drop. Researchers at ASU's W.P. Carey School of Business say the Phoenix market is now severely out of balance. The Cromford Report, a gold standard for local housing data, shows that active listings in Maricopa County have doubled compared to last year, and the median number of days a home sits on the market has jumped to 4 times its previous level. This is what a market stall looks like. But the most serious threat isn't inventory or investor behavior. It's water, or the lack of it. The Colorado River crisis isn't some far-off warning. It has already slammed into Arizona's economic future. The state's Department of Water Resources has blocked new housing developments in parts of Greater Phoenix, openly stating that groundwater supplies cannot support additional construction. If you can't guarantee water, you can't keep building homes. And if you can't build, you can't sustain growth. Foreclosure activity is also moving upward, with ATM data recording a 15% rise in filings, another indicator that pressure on homeowners is growing. With investors disappearing, supply swelling, and the state itself signaling limits on future development, the Arizona housing boom is slipping back into the desert sand. A sharp correction seems unavoidable. If you're in Arizona, are those for sale signs stacking up on your block? Number 6. Nevada. As you leave Arizona behind and continue west, the glow of Las Vegas begins to rise from the desert, almost like a mirage. But don't let the neon fool you. Nevada's housing market runs on the same logic as its slot machines: high stakes, wild swings, and a whole lot of risk. And just like a gambler who never quite learned the lesson, Nevada seems to be repeating its old mistakes. During the 2008 crash, Nevada wasn't just struggling, it was the epicenter. The state held the #1 spot for foreclosures for 62 straight months, and home prices ultimately fell by more than 60%. Today, many of the warning signs from that era are flashing again. The core problem is structural. The state's economic backbone is built on leisure and hospitality, an industry the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics classifies as low-paying, unstable, and highly vulnerable to economic downturns. When tourism slows even slightly, Nevada's entire financial ecosystem starts to wobble. And affordability, it's practically non-existent. According to the Nevada Housing Coalition, a minimum wage worker would need to clock 96 hours a week just to cover the cost of a basic one-bedroom rental. That alone tells you how disconnected the housing market has become from actual wages. A large part of the pandemic-era boom was fueled by outside investors. The National Association of Realtors noted a surge in all-cash investor purchases in Las Vegas during that period. But that wave of speculative money has now pulled back, and the market is feeling the emptiness it left behind. The Las Vegas Realtors Association reports sharply reduced sales activity, and inventory has risen enough to resemble pre-pandemic levels. Zillow data paints an even clearer picture. Nearly 30% of listings in both Las Vegas and Reno have been forced to cut prices. And just like before, the foreclosures are making their way back. ATM Data Solutions has ranked Nevada among the top 5 states for foreclosure rates throughout 2024, a sign that financial stress is building beneath the surface. Behind the shimmering strip, the foundation of this housing market is extremely fragile. Nevada doesn't experience gentle slowdowns, it experiences full-scale crashes. The music is fading, and the state is preparing for another harsh economic morning. We're approaching the halfway point on this journey. If this breakdown is helping you understand what's ahead, make sure you're subscribed. You'll want to see the next states on this list. Number 5, Idaho. Alright, buckle in tight for this one. Our journey now brings us into what might be the clearest example of a pandemic-era housing frenzy gone completely off the rails: Idaho. As you roll into Boise, you can practically sense the leftover shock in the atmosphere. From 2019 to 2022, Idaho didn't just experience rising home prices, it saw some of the most extreme and unrealistic increases in the entire country. Boise, once known for its modest cost of living, watched property values double in just a few short years. And no, this surge wasn't powered by solid economic fundamentals, it was fueled by a story, a trend. Remote workers fleeing the West Coast flooded the state with cash, especially buyers arriving from California and Washington. They came chasing affordability and quality of life, but ironically, their arrival sent costs soaring far beyond what locals could ever sustain. Now the wave has retreated, and what's being revealed isn't pretty. The Federal Housing Finance Agency ranks Idaho among the most inflated housing markets nationwide, estimating that prices sit over 50% above what historical patterns would justify. The correction has already begun, and it's hitting hard. Zillow's data shows Boise home prices have fallen more than 15% from the peak, but that slide is likely just the early stage of a much deeper reset. The core issue is painfully simple. Local incomes can't support the price levels that investors and out-of-state buyers left behind. According to the Idaho Department of Labor, wages have grown, but nowhere near fast enough. The typical home in Boise is still priced at nearly 8 times the median local income, far beyond the healthy benchmark of 3 to 4 times. And the market slowdown is unmistakable. The Intermountain MLS reports that listings now sit for 60 days or more, a dramatic shift from the sold-in-hours chaos of the pandemic. To make matters worse, large investors and corporate landlords began offloading properties onto the rental market. Boise State Public Radio notes that rent prices have actually fallen for the first time in 10 years, a sign that demand is drying up across the board. Idaho's housing boom wasn't built on stability. It was a speculative surge powered by remote work enthusiasm and easy money. That energy has vanished. The outside cash is gone, the locals are priced out, and the investors who once drove the frenzy are now walking away. This bubble isn't slowly deflating, it's dissolving into thin air. Number 4. New York. Our road trip now takes a dramatic turn. We're leaving the vast Rocky Mountain landscapes behind and heading all the way to the East Coast, straight into New York. And the situation here isn't what most people picture when they imagine a housing crash. This isn't about sprawling suburbs or overbuilt subdivisions. New York's crisis is built on two pillars: people leaving in droves and costs spiraling out of control. The exit numbers are staggering. According to recent U.S. Census Bureau data, no state has lost more residents over the past 3 years than New York. We're not talking about a slow trickle. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people packing up and heading elsewhere. The dominant reason? A relentless cost of living crisis that's choking both families and businesses. The Tax Foundation consistently ranks New York as having the worst business tax environment in the entire country, paired with one of the highest tax burdens for ordinary residents. And this isn't just a New York City issue. Even cities like Buffalo and Rochester, which briefly benefited from pandemic demand, are now cooling sharply as long-term demographic and economic weaknesses reassert themselves. Inside New York City, the housing market is split into two completely different realities. On one end, the ultra-luxury sector has essentially frozen solid. Buyers have vanished, and sellers are quietly cutting prices behind closed doors. On the other end, entry-level buyers face punishing interest rates that make even modest apartments feel out of reach. Data from the Real Estate Board of New York paints a harsh picture. Transaction volume has fallen nearly 30% compared to the post-pandemic peak. The market isn't just slowing, it's seizing up. But the real trouble is what you don't see. New York is quietly building a massive shadow inventory, homes that aren't officially listed but are stuck in limbo. Many of these properties are tied up in foreclosure pipelines. According to ATM data, foreclosure activity in the state has jumped 25% year over year, and those numbers are expected to climb even higher. Add to that the new congestion pricing rules set to hit Manhattan, plus a commercial real estate sector still struggling to recover from remote work, and you have a negative economic cycle that will spill directly into residential neighborhoods. When office towers bleed value, nearby housing prices suffer too. Put it all together: a shrinking population, the highest taxes in the country, collapsing affordability, rising foreclosures, a weakening commercial sector, and you don't get a functioning housing market. You get a trap. Demand is evaporating, but prices and taxes haven't caught up to reality. When they finally do, expect a rapid and painful correction. Now buckle up. We're heading into the top 3 states facing the most severe systemic housing breakdowns in the entire country. Number 3. Washington. We're heading back toward the Pacific Northwest now, entering the evergreen landscape of Washington state. For years, this place was the poster child for unstoppable economic growth. And the reason was simple: big tech ruled everything. Companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and the massive network of satellite firms surrounding them pumped thousands of well-paid workers into the region. Inevitably, the Seattle housing market skyrocketed right along with them. But that era of constant expansion has given way to a difficult reality. You're now driving into a state dealing with the aftermath of a tech-fueled boom that overheated everything in its path. When you build an entire regional economy around a single sector, any slowdown becomes catastrophic. And that's exactly what Washington is confronting. Beginning in 2023, the titans of the tech world, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, began cutting staff at a scale not seen since the dot-com era. Tens of thousands of high-income employees were suddenly out of work. That shakeup didn't just hurt morale in Seattle's tech corridors, it delivered a direct shock to the housing market. The Northwest Multiple Listing Service data is blunt. Inventory across King County is rising quickly. And this isn't because builders are putting up more homes, it's because upper-income households, many tied to the tech sector, are selling. Prices are reacting just as sharply. Redfin shows Seattle home values have fallen close to 14% from their peak, with the decline even more pronounced in wealthy eastside communities like Bellevue and Redmond, areas that were almost entirely propped up by tech executives and their stock option wealth. But layoffs alone aren't Washington's whole story. The state is wrestling with a broader affordability crisis and a deteriorating sense of social stability. Even after the recent price drops, the median home in Seattle still costs more than $800,000. Add in highly visible homelessness issues and ongoing public safety concerns, and you get an urban doom loop narrative that residents and investors can't easily ignore. A study from the University of Washington underscored just how distorted the region has become. The gap between typical wages and housing costs outside of the tech bubble is among the worst in America. Then there's the policy environment: new taxes on capital gains, expensive real estate transaction fees, and some of the highest gas and property taxes in the country have sped up the departure of wealthy earners. And when upper-bracket households leave a market like Seattle, the ripple effects are enormous. Washington's housing boom was built on tech salaries and stock option wealth. Now that the tech sector has hit the brakes, the foundation underneath that boom is crumbling. Without constant inflows of high-income workers, the market has nothing solid left to support its inflated prices. Number 2. Illinois. We're rolling deeper into the Midwest now, crossing into Illinois, and the shift in atmosphere is impossible to ignore. There's a heaviness here, a sense that the housing crisis didn't explode overnight, but has been quietly spreading like rust for decades. Unlike the fast booms and sudden crashes we've seen elsewhere, Illinois is dealing with a long, steady breakdown, and it's being driven by two forces that are extraordinarily difficult to reverse: a dramatic population drain and a financial system that's barely staying afloat. Let's start with the people. Illinois is experiencing an exodus on a scale that few other states can match. The U.S. Census Bureau confirms that Illinois has been losing residents for 10 straight years, making it one of only 3 states to shrink in the last census cycle. Families, workers, and retirees are all packing up and leaving, and when they go, they take their tax contributions with them. That leads directly to the second issue: property taxes. To put it bluntly, Illinois has some of the most punishing property tax rates in the entire country. According to WalletHub, the state consistently ranks number 1 for highest effective property taxes. It's not unusual to see a modest $250,000 house saddled with an $8,000 annual tax bill, a burden that becomes nearly impossible for homeowners to justify. This creates a devastating feedback loop. As more residents escape the state, the tax base shrinks. But Illinois still has to cover its staggering financial obligations, especially its public pensions. The Illinois Policy Institute estimates the state is dealing with over $140 billion in unfunded pension liabilities. With fewer taxpayers left to foot the bill, the state turns back to the people who remain, raising taxes again and again just to keep the books balanced. And that pressure crushes the housing market. Why would anyone buy here when the risk is so obvious? Many homeowners watch their property values stall or decline while their tax bills keep rising. The Illinois Association of Realtors reports steep drops in home sales, and inventory continues to sit on the market across the Chicago metropolitan area. Zillow data shows a growing trend of homes being sold for a loss, even after only a few years of ownership. Then there's the foreclosure situation. Atom Data Solutions has repeatedly placed Illinois among the top 3 states with the highest foreclosure activity. Unlike Florida or Texas, Illinois isn't suffering from a bubble bursting. Instead, it's dealing with decades of economic erosion. There's no booming tech scene to lift prices, no wave of new arrivals to stimulate demand, and no rescue plan capable of fixing its deep structural problems. Illinois isn't heading toward a correction. It's sliding into a controlled decline, one that becomes less controllable with every passing year. Number 1. California. Our cross-country journey reaches its final destination as we descend out of the Sierra Nevada and step into California, the Golden State. And topping this list is no surprise because of mystery, but because of its magnitude. The warning signs here aren't small or subtle. California isn't just dealing with a housing bubble, it's facing what many economists consider the most dangerous real estate imbalance on the planet. For nearly 4 decades, the belief that California home prices always rise shaped everything from investor behavior to family decisions. But that unwritten law has snapped, and the core fundamentals holding the market together are unraveling one by one. Let's break down the collapse. First, the population flight. For the first time in California's history, more people are leaving than arriving. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the state lost over 500,000 residents in just a 2-year span. The high-cost, high-tax lifestyle that once fueled prosperity is now pushing households, workers, and even businesses out of the state entirely. Second, the insurance meltdown. This crisis makes Florida's situation look tame. After years of catastrophic wildfires, major insurers, State Farm, Allstate, Farmers, and others have either stopped offering new homeowner policies or significantly reduced coverage. The state-run insurer of last resort, the California Fair Plan, has exploded in size, tripling its policy count. A study from the Berkeley Research Group warns that as many as 7 million homes may lose access to full insurance. And here's the part that freezes the housing market. You cannot secure a mortgage if the property cannot be insured. This alone can halt transactions statewide. Third, affordability has completely detached from reality. The median home price in California still sits above $800,000, and in major coastal markets, crossing $1 million is normal. The California Association of Realtors reports that only 15% of households in the state earn enough to buy a median-priced home. That is one of the worst affordability readings ever recorded in the U.S. Meanwhile, the economic engine that once justified these prices tech is shrinking. Silicon Valley is experiencing its largest pullback since the early 2000s, with over 200,000 layoffs from major companies, and the cracks are spreading fast. IATAME Data Solutions shows foreclosure starts in California are up more than 30% year over year. Redfin reports that San Francisco home values are down nearly 20% from their peak. Commercial real estate in the Bay Area has slipped into an outright depression, with vacant towers and collapsing valuations. California is facing a storm of interconnected problems: shrinking population, vanishing insurance options, a tech slowdown, unaffordable housing, and rising distress in both residential and commercial markets. This isn't a simple correction, it's a structural reckoning.